Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. Today is the 13th of June 2023 and we are going to have a detailed discussion today. Instead of talking of different topics, just one topic that is of importance to Pakistan, and that is a cyclone Biparjoy. The cyclone Biparjoy, as per the latest alert, says it is going to make landfall between Keti Bandar, Indian Gujarat coast on the 15th of June, that is 3 days from now. Our Minister for Climate Change, Shahid Rahman Sahiba, says 113 millimeters of rain is expected in Karachi. She has urged public to take advisories issued by the authorities very seriously without panicking. At the same time, the NDMA chief also says 100,000 people in the vulnerable areas will be evacuated by the 15th of June. As far as India is concerned, that is also another country that is going to be severely affected by this cyclone. 4 people are dead. India has also stepped up its evacuations. To talk about the different aspects of the cyclone Biparjoy, the history of cyclones in Pakistan, and much more. We've been joined by 2 guests in the studios. Our first guest on my very right is Waqar Sherazi. Waqar Sherazi is an expert on disaster response. Waqar sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Our second guest is Sarmad Iqbal Khan. He's the head of policy advocacy at the International Rescue Committee. Sarmad, you're a regular guest in our shows and will come back to talk of a very important topic that could be very relevant for Pakistan in the coming days and currently as well. Let's begin with you, Waqar Sherazi Saab. Our climate minister Shahid Rahman Sahiba says that even if the Biparjoy cyclone does not hit Pakistan's coastline, high velocity winds and rains are likely to cause damage. The situation remains unpredictable. I will go to Waqar Sherazi and of course Sarmad as well, but before that, let's watch a detailed analysis in our report on cyclone Biparjoy.
An extraordinary situation has arisen in Pakistan's province Sindh owing to the threat of tropical cyclone storm which is moving near the southeastern coast of the country. The cyclone Biparjoy has now been downgraded from extremely severe cyclonic storm to very severe cyclonic storm, and it moved further north-northwestward during the last 12 hours. As per Pakistan Met Department, high-intensity gusty winds, rain and subsequent coastal inundation were likely in the areas under effect of the cyclonic system. Coastal communities in Sindh province are forecast to receive 30 centimeters of rain and suffer storm surges up to 3.5 meters high, which could inundate low-lying settlements. Instructions have been issued to all garrisons of Pakistan Army regarding public assistance and rescue missions on an emergency basis. Climate Minister Shahid Rahman raised alarm that Karachi will likely face urban flooding given the scale and intensity of winds. Meanwhile, Sindh Information Minister Sharjeel Inam Mayman said 26,855 people had been evacuated across the province, out of which 19,205 evacuations were conducted by the government, while the remaining had voluntarily moved to safer locations. As Pakistan's coastal region braced for cyclone Biparjoy, the adverse impact of climate change is more evident now.
I will discuss the different aspects across the Pakistani hemisphere concerning cyclone Biparjoy. We'll ask our first question to Waqar Sherazi. Waqar, I was talking before we went to the report about Climate Minister Shahid Rahman Sahiba, who says that even if the cyclone does not hit Pakistan's coastline, there are going to be high velocity winds as well as rains. She talked about 113 millimeters of rain that might hit Karachi, which of course is going to cause likely damage. We know how Karachi's infrastructure is. The situation in your point of view, is it unpredictable? Can we see what could happen or what would happen?
Many thanks indeed, Omar. I think the situation is not unpredictable since the situation has arisen from June 7, and there were predictions that the cyclone would be getting severer and it would be moving towards Karachi and many areas of Pakistan. So I think we have had enough time for emergency preparations. We could have meanwhile make some makeshift arrangements for the drainage system and for the electricity tripping and the possible electricity shocks if the water logging situation happens in Karachi because of heavy rainfall. But the most important thing is evacuation of people from creeks, from Kharochan, from Keti Bandar, from many other coastal areas. And it was said that about 100,000 individuals have to be evacuated, but we have reports so far that about 30,000 people only have been evacuated so far. And it is expected that the cyclone will hit Pakistan between 14 and 15 June, most likely at noon of 15 June, but we'll have to prepare ourselves. So in this regard, I think with regards to evacuation, we need to focus more, and we need to pace up the activities to make people more secure and to shift them at safer places to better cope up the emergency situation in Karachi.
All right. Sarmad, coming to you, Keti Bandar has been completely evacuated as far as the reports are concerned. Sajawal has been partially evacuated. All the hospitals in Sindh have been put on high alert as well. 26,855 people have been evacuated across the province. The target is 100,000 people. What further measures need to be taken in order to save human life? Because if we just come a little bit behind, before cyclone Biparjoy, there was a cyclone Shaheen in the year 2021 and the cyclone Theokte as well in the same year. It is after a gap of 2 years that we are having a cyclone and fears from what the cyclone could do as far as damage is concerned to human and infrastructure.
But you know, at the center of every emergency is the impact to women and children.
True.
So any measures that have been taken so far on evacuation and putting medical services and others at high alert is one of the things that needs to be done immediately. Although the fear is that there are many people who are still stranded, who don't want to leave their places, and they would be forced to leave the areas, as there have been reports today in the media as well that some of the communities were forced to by the government to leave their areas. They weren't willing. So that's one paradigm that we're looking at. At the same time, there are certain areas which would be hit very severely. You know, and Keti Bandar, Sir Creek are on top. And it's a spillover effect from the current trend that this cyclone is going through. However, for cyclones, we have to remember there are patterns of how and when these cyclones are formed. So there are three things that we need to look at. One is the warm atmosphere, then is the thunderstorms or the clouds joining together, and then the air movement. Now all that clubbed together forms into a cyclone. It's named hurricane in different areas, but cyclone is part of our Arabian Sea and our coastal belt. This is a common phenomena there. But there are three categories of the cyclone as well. Cyclone, super cyclone, and severe cyclone.
So what is this? Now, is it a severe? It is a very severe cyclone, which is category 3, isn't it? This is as per the latest reports.
When the air pressure or the wind pressure reaches above 120 kilometers per hour, that's termed as super cyclone. And right now we are seeing the impact of super cyclone in Badin, on Hyderabad to Karachi coastal highway, in Thatta, in some parts of Karachi as well, because of the strong winds that are blowing
140
right now.
to 150 kilometers per hour.
Right now, that's the biggest challenge. Although we definitely need to take measures to make sure that our populace is safe from this impact.
All right, Waqar Sherazi, Shahir Rahman Saiba says the situation is unpredictable but urges caution. This keyword caution, you know, is seldom understood by our people here, whether it be the floods of 2022, whether it be this very upcoming cyclone. I'm hearing reports of many people who have gone to the coast just to see how the winds are and just to see how the cyclone is going to come up. Isn't it very immature and how should I say very an attitude that does not merit being that under the current situation? How can we make our people, our nation understand that they need to take certain precautions?
Well, Omar, unfortunately, it sounds to be our national behavior. We don't put heed to any of the precautionary measures most of the time. But if it is only attributed to masses, then it is understandable. But with regards to the preparatory measures taken by the organizations, private sector organizations and the public sector organization, we are again on a weaker link. I think that in middle of any crisis, in any climate-induced calamity, we always talk about the preparatory measures. And when the calamity is over, we forget everything. And then again we went into a hibernation situation. So unless the preparatory measures are taken serious in Pakistan and strategic means long-term preparatory measures are taken, not in terms of mitigating the climate-induced calamities, but providing people with secure places in case of calamities and many other preparations, will not be able to cope up the situation. It is not only about masses. We always blame them that they are not paying attention to the cautions given by the authorities. I think there is a lacking sector within authorities as well.
All right.
Are they well prepared in terms of making themselves more resilient towards the calamities?
But I think
answer is no.
I mean, when we look at the different messages that are coming, whether it be from Sindh Chief Minister Murad Ali Shah, whether it be the NDMA chief, it looks as if they are quite serious as far as the precautions that they are trying to take as far as the people of the Sindh province are concerned. But of course, I understand that more needs to be done as far as these precautions are concerned. Maybe more stringent actions are concerned. The people need to be forced, not told, I think forced to take the precautions that have been given by the government. And I totally understand your perspective. Sarmad, I'd like to understand the last cyclone that hit us, the cyclone Shaheen, it kind of diverted towards from Sindh's coastline to Oman at the very last moment. That is why we did not have any casualties. But before that, the cyclone Tyukte killed people, at least 4 people, injured many others in multiple incidents. Can this cyclone divert at the last moment? Are there any chances that it might divert to another region at the very last moment?
Well, the temperature and the wind pattern can change any moment. It's all up to the God's will. But however, predictions right now are showing that things are increasing, things are worsening, the wind is gaining speed, the momentum is increasing right now, and there's a fear that it could go beyond what is predicted right now. And on the other hand, it could go down as what is predicted. So we're in the middle of an analytical situation, which is kind of in a dilute state right now. Although we are projecting it based on our technology, based on our coastal services that are there from the Navy that are monitoring the coastlines with regards to temperature changes and others. So it's a lot of scientific information that is flowing in. However, the analysis are yet to determine how this thing is going to evolve, because we still have 1 or 2 days to actually see where this goes. However, we do have a trajectory of it moving away from Pakistan, and there's a trajectory of it having a spillover effect into Pakistan.
But of course, the effects will be not only on Pakistan but also on India as well. In India also, we've heard of 4 people dying. This said, the areas likely to be affected as per the reports include Thatta, Badeen, Sajawal, Tharparkar, Karachi, Mirpur Khas, Umarkot, Hyderabad, Ormara, Tandola Yar Khan, Tandu Muhammad Khan. My question, Waqar Sherazi, is whether it be floods in last year, whether it be this year, this cyclone, how we see that Pakistan is very vulnerable as far as climate change is concerned. We have highlighted that time and again. But of course, the floods was due to something else. This is due to something else. These are 2 different reasons, but directly or indirectly related to climate change. What measures do you feel now the government needs to take on an urgent, how should I even say, extremely urgent basis in order to prevent any effect from disasters such as this that could happen because it hasn't happened yet, or the floods in the future?
Omar, I would like to add a few sentences to what my colleague
Sarmad
has said, Sarmad has said. There is a divided opinion. Some of the experts are saying that the cyclone may move towards Pakistan, and some of the experts are also saying that whenever the monsoon and the cyclone coincide, the monsoon spell is weakened because much of it is taken by the cyclone itself. So it slowly moves towards the expected areas. But in this particular case, it has been said that this will change the direction of monsoon more towards Pakistan than India. So if this happens, there would be more heavy downpour in Pakistan. And
imagine the downpour in Karachi, if it happens,
Yes.
the effect that it could have.
Yeah, not only in Karachi, you can imagine that previously we just had a flood in throughout Pakistan, and there were waterlogging in many districts of Sindh. many months after the floods over there. So if same happens there again, I think that the situation would be a humanitarian crisis in Pakistan, because there
But
can
this
be
is a very important point that you put up, Waqar, because the fact remains that most of the areas that could be impacted by the cyclone are the same areas that have also been impacted by the floods. And this is going to be a double disaster for those people if and only if they are impacted by this cyclone. When we look at the vulnerabilities and so much effects that the people have had, whether it be in terms of food security, in terms of disease, in terms of lack of proper sanitary measures, or lack of proper drinking water is concerned, do you feel this cyclone could add to it if in fact it does strike Karachi and other areas?
While we were hit by the floods 2022, it was said that many of the drainage systems of Pakistan were not maintained by the authorities. There were forestation within the drains, there were habitation within the drains, so resultantly there were spillovers, and many of the undercultivated areas and the habited areas of Pakistan where people were living in planned dwellings, they were underwater. I think we have learned a little from floods 2022, and the same situation can happen in Karachi again. Not only in Karachi, in Kharochan, in Thatta, in Sar Creek, in Run of Kutch, and in many areas of Pakistan. I can just put the same question as you have raised, that are we prepared? Since we have not done anything to the drainage system to manage this potential downpour. I don't know about the K-electric preparations, I don't know about the evacuations, and I would like to phrase a question to my colleague, that how many preparations have been taken with regards to rescuing the people in any potential emergency, which apparently seems to be very dormant and very passive. I'm sorry to sound a bit critical, but it is, I think it is the factual situation.
That's your point of view, and of course you can address your point of view. Coming to you, Sarmad, 13,000 people just in KT Bandar who are susceptible to a disaster if it happens because of cyclone Biparjoy. I would like address the same question that Waqar wants to ask. What measures have been taken by the organizations in the private sector, like yours, for example, in case such a disaster does strike?
Well, moving on from the floods in 2020 or 2022, our preposition was there based on the 10 floods. The committees were formed, people were trained, people were taught of early warning system, people were taught of first aid, people were taught of how to actually evacuate in a safe and sound scenarios. But the 2022 actually disrupted everything because it was after a decade and people lost track of it, or people lost a hold of that whole conversation. However, the need for recurring capacity building is arising again and again. Now, having said that,
and when you talk of capacity building, what are you exactly referring to?
Referring to formation of committees, the disaster management committees at the union council, at the village level, which are prone
at the
to
local
hazard,
level,
at the local level, which are prone to hazards such as floods. Now, coming on to this current situation, we are right now working with the provincial government, PDMAs, DDMAs in Thatta, Sajawal, Badin, Hyderabad, and a few other areas with regards to prepositioning, because we are not there to evacuate people, but we can be there to receive those people. We can be there to provide support to these people. We've done the same in 2010, we've done the same in 2022, and this will continue to go on. However, the current situation as it stands look like a category 3 as it is right now. God forbid it should not hit us, and we pray that it doesn't hit us. But if it does, the devastation that we are foreseeing, or the government is foreseeing, is huge. However, government is trying on its own part to put in place certain measures, and they're engaging with private sector organizations such as IRC. And since we are on the ground, we are providing support, we are pre-positioning, and we've already raised our response levels to respond to category 3 crisis in terms of specifically receiving the people who have been forced to move out of their areas and land in a protected situation.
All right, that's interesting, because you talk of measures. I have a little table that was made by the Provincial Disaster Management Authority by the government of Sindh. It talks about the precautionary measures against the cyclone, pre-cyclone, during cyclone and post-cyclone. And of course the measures are detailed, whether it be preparing oneself for evacuation, keeping electronic devices charged, following television and verified social media accounts, keeping first aid kit ready, sharing essential documents in waterproof container bags, keeping essential items such as clothes ready. When you talk of people from all of these areas that are going to be affected, whether it be KT Banda, whether it be Badin, whether it be Ormada or other such, do the people understand, is this being disseminated to each and every person, Waqar? Being part of a disaster response and understanding disaster response in Pakistan, do you feel all of these measures that I talked, this is just the pre-cyclone measures, are these being properly disseminated? And if not, do you feel the elements such as the radio, elements such as mosques could be used?
Yeah. Omar, it sounds apparently very rosy that people must be prepared with their emergency medical kit. In the globe, we see that the marginalized groups or the poorest communities are less resilient to any natural calamities or disasters, and they are the most affected one in case of any calamity or climate-induced calamity or man-made disaster. While saying with this that be prepared with your clothes, be prepared with your vehicle to move on a safer place, be prepared with your medical kit, it sounds very rosy. But do you think that they have even the medical kit in whole vicinity? The answer is no. Do you think that your disseminated message is actually reaching out the poor communities?
But shouldn't the role of the, as Sarmad pointed out, the people who are locally present, such as local community leaders, such as your religious leaders who give sermons on every Friday in all the different mosques, and I am sure there are mosques in every single locality that is going to be affected by the cyclone, shouldn't their role become more important?
Omar, awareness is not a short-term process. Like if we want to educate our people, it is not a short-term process. Right at the moment, we can disseminate the message through mosques, loudspeakers, and other religious influencers and local influencers.
Radio.
Within the communities with radio. But as Sarmad mentioned, that is there any impact? Are the people ready to accept the information or the precautions given by these mediums? So if the answer is yes, then we are in a safer situation. If the answer is partially yes and partially no,
that we will know in the next couple of days, to be very frank, whether the people were ready, whether the people understood what the meaning of the messaging was when they talked about all the measures that need to be taken. That, I think, Waqar, to be very frank, we'll only know, I hope not, if disaster strikes these areas that the cyclone.
May I add a few things?
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
I think that the situations and the conditions are very conducive for the cyclone in Pakistan, since the wind shear over the Arabian Sea is providing a very conducive environment to the cyclone to move towards Pakistan. Moreover, the dry air within the central areas of Pakistan is giving another conducive environment to the cyclone, because the cyclone swallows the dry air and it moves toward the dry packets, and then it further creates a low pressure within that areas, and low pressure further then pulls the cyclone. So many of the experts are saying that the environment is very conducive to pull the cyclone towards Pakistan. So we'll have to prepare ourselves.
Okay.
We should not be staying on just prayers that
no, of course, that is why the measures are being taken. That is why the PDMA or the NDMA or the other organizations, or even our parliamentarians were discussing that in the National Assembly itself today, as far as the measures that need to be taken, as far as the government needs to be on a very quick footing as far as how to help the people in need is concerned. But this is a collective responsibility. This is
in this regard, it sounds to be a positive change that a calamity is being discussed in Pakistan before actually the calamity happens. So it is a positive change, and our learning curve may be very linear, but we have started the journey at least.
That is true. Sarmad, we've talked a lot of Sindh, but we haven't talked much on Balochistan. I'd like to refer to what Shazia Mari Sahiba said today in the National Assembly. And she said the government is taking precautionary measures in Balochistan. Pakistan is facing climate crisis, which ultimately affects the people. The House also, the National Assembly also played for the vulnerable people on the coastlines as well. So there is that, this understanding within our leaders as well on what could happen, what could strike Pakistan in the next coming days. What about Balochistan? Is the Balochistan government ready? What should be done on the coastlines in Balochistan?
Well, I'll start off with one of the message that Shari Rahman, the Minister for Climate Change, said a couple of hours ago, is that we need to listen to the advisories of PDMA. So now that message transforms or translates into many things. Maybe people are skeptical of the advisories. Maybe people are not taking it
because that is why I have this table with all the measures taken. Maybe people don't take it seriously.
And your earlier question about responsible and irresponsible behavior, that is always there. We've got people who have a tendency to want to see certain things which are
first hand,
first hand, and probably go on social media as well
and make videos on that.
But that behavior actually puts them in a troubled situation. Having said that, the coastline is at the front of bearing the impact. So whether it's Balochistan, whether it's Sindh, the coastal areas will be impacted. However, the reports that are coming in with regards to changing direction of the cyclone, Balochistan would be less likely to get impacted as compared to Sindh. So that's one thing there. However, the governments are trying to preposition. They are reaching out to international organizations such as IRC to see what kind of precautionary measures, prepositioning measures, what kind of services could be offered. And we've already been part and parcel of the health departments in Sindh and KP and Balochistan. So we are trying to preposition our stuff within the hospitals, within the basic health units, so that we could be ready to respond alongside the law enforcement agencies and the provincial governments who are there. So we are in the process of that.
I think it needs to be a collective responsibility, because in calamities such as these, we need to come up as one. It is not just the responsibility of the government, whether it be provincial or federal, and just not the responsibility of our armed forces, because we always see them the first in line when it comes to helping the people in need, or even the local communities. It is a collective responsibility of each and every single person. I'd like to refer, Waqar, to the Sindh Information Minister Sharjeel Memon Saab, who via his Twitter account has laid down precautions for communities likely to be affected by the cyclone as well. He also says that relief camps have been established by the district administration, and the people need to move over there as a precautionary measure as well. Farmers, cattle holders are also directed to take all necessary mitigative precautionary measures to safeguard their crops and livestock. This is also a very important aspect, crops, livestock. This is also something that was affected in the floods in 2022. What are your expectations of the damage caused to the crops and livestock if this cyclone indeed hits?
Well, in many of the areas of Sindh, there were no crop because of 2022 floods, because there were water logging, and many of the water courses was not rehabilitated so far. So this cropping season was observed to be very poor in many of the districts of Sindh. With this regard, if there are some of the standing crops, I think there is no way and no mean with the farmers to protect their crops from any of the cyclones. But if there are some crops within their storage, I am skeptical whether they will
we're going to continue our discussion, but we have to go to a short break. We'll be back right after. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom, and we are discussing Cyclone Biparjoy, the effects that it could have on Pakistan and all the areas that are surrounding the coastline, whether it be in the Sindh province or in Balochistan province. Slowly and steadily we are getting more and more information, but as far as this cyclone is concerned, it might hit the coastal areas between the 14th night and the 15th in the afternoon. So of course the necessary measures are being taken, whether it be by the PDMA, whether it be by the provincial government of Sindh and Balochistan, whether it be by our armed forces as well. We have been joined by two guests as we were discussing during the whole course of the show, Waqar Sherazi and Sarmad Iqbal Khan. Waqar, let's come to you. Different cyclones have hit Pakistan since the 1960s, the first being the cyclone O2A that hit on the June 12, 1964. It impacted the lives of 400,000 people way then and caused damage worth $4,100,000 in 1964. At that time, the population, remember, was much less of the area, so was the rupee versus dollar parity. Now we are in 2023, the population has exceeded. How much of the populace is at risk?
I think that it would be very premature to say, because it depends largely on the severity of the storm, how it hits Pakistan, whether it hits Pakistan or not with the severe condition, and whether it brings a heavy downpour in Pakistan or the predictions are not actualized. So in any case, it is expected that it would be affecting at least more than 1 million people in Sindh and Balochistan province. And as I have earlier mentioned, that there would be more heavy downpours in Pakistan in comparison to...
Will the downpours be restricted to Sindh and Balochistan, or will Punjab and the federal areas also be...
As I have mentioned that there is a dry air situation in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's plain areas. So it would be pulling more wet airs towards this area. So there would be, there is likely to be more downpour in these areas as well than normal. So with regards to heavy downpours, we need to look at ourselves, that whether we are prepared in rescuing people towards safer places in terms of any possible flood, whether we are able to provide food security, whether we are able to reserve the pure water reservoirs in time of any emergency, and most importantly, we'll have to work upon for the emergency preparations for women, children, and elderly people.
Food, whether it be food, whether it be water, whether it be sanitary precautions, whether it be also medicine. Because there could be different diseases that could crop up as a result of the havoc that could, we are just talking of probabilities right now because it hasn't happened, but we need to talk of these probabilities because people need to be prepared. Sarmad, the strongest cyclone that hit Karachi or Sindh area was between May 20th to 22nd, 1999. It's known as Cyclone 2A. It hit Thatta, Umarkot, Mirpur, Badin, Hyderabad, Tharparkar. 6,200 people died as a result of that. 657,000 people were affected. 9,252 people were left homeless. You can make the math between 1999 and 2023 as well on the population that has increased and everything. The same areas are now being affected or could be affected by Cyclone Biparjoy. What should be the primary measures that if you or me, we were living in the areas that could be affected, need to take now, 2 days before it could hit us?
Looking at the trajectory, the development at that time and development now, you can compare the situation there. The congested environment or the congesting housing that we have now wasn't there. So if the winds are extreme,
the waste management issues weren't there as much as it was.
Exactly. So if the winds are extreme, there's a lot of challenges that these communities could face with falling walls, with falling shutters, with falling roofs, and so much more. At the same time, the outfall drains that were supposed to take water out of the country into the sea, if there's a reversal of water within that, how would that impact? Where would that end at? That is one of the things that we need to look at. There weren't any signboards, or there were probably 1 or 2 boards at that time. Right now, all the boards and all the signage across roads and everything is there. There's a tendency of them falling down, and with people, our behavior. If we are irresponsible, we might be at the helm of the affairs, but at the same time the responsibility needs to step in and people need to start taking care of themselves as well as at the government. So the government is right now taking measures to educate the people by informing them about the possible impacts and allowing them to move out of the areas or facilitating movement in some cases. However, there are certain communities who have livestock. Will they be able to move in time? I don't know. That's a question yet to be answered.
But still there is some time. It's not as if it's going to hit tomorrow. There are still 2 days left if it does hit. So people can, at least do something about it.
Well, if the downpour starts, as it has already started in some of the areas, there are mud roads. In and out is a challenge. So there are the Pakistan Army, military and other installations within that premises are trying to facilitate that process. There's been deployment of troops, law enforcement agencies are there, PDMA is operational, district government is trying their resources, and at the same time organizations like us are trying to actually maintain the push and pull factor within that. So all this clubbed together will consolidate into a quick response. However, the effectiveness and appropriateness of that response would be informed to us in time. So the people's behaviors, people's willingness to move, people's willingness to relocate, people's willingness to detach from their belongings and save themselves, that is another question that yet needs to be answered. At the same time, the services of 1122, which have been recently multiplied within the Sindh, they are now, it's a real test for them as well when it comes to this.
But there are certain other numbers that have been also been given, whether it be the PDMA helpline 0335. I'd like to give it to you people as well. 0335 555 7362 is the Provincial Disaster Management Authority helpline that you can reach in any case if you have any query whatsoever. Control Room South 021 9920 5628. Control Room in Korangi is 021 99 333 926. Control Room in Kimadi is 021 99 333 176. Control Room in Marir is 021 9924 8916. Control Room in Badin is 0297 920013. In Thatta, the control room's number is 0298 920061 62 and 63. And in Sajawal, the control room's number is 0298 510833. There is a DHA helpline as well, 1092 032326523840 021 354 0009 021 111 589 589. I wanted to share these numbers because we were just talking with Sarmad about the numbers that have become more active, especially since the floods happened in 2022. So these numbers have now been added. If you have any issue, please call these numbers beforehand to understand the precautionary measures that you need to take. Sarmad, we were saying.
Yeah, with regards to the coastal areas, we are talking about coastal impacts. However, the urban impacts in terms of urban flooding, that is a possibility.
Rains, what could happen if only Karachi is impacted by heavy rains?
Then the Malir river, or I would call it Malir Nadi, that's the local term for it, that's flooding. There are housing constructions on both sides. If that gets flooded, there's a disconnect between two societies, movement gets restricted. How would we approach that? The longest routes we have to go around. Kinjar Jheel, I don't know how that is going to be impacted. These are all hotspots in terms of potential disasters that could evolve.
You spoke of hotspots. We're a bit short of time, so the last question I'm going to ask to the both of you, starting from Waqar, and I'd like short, concise answers. Energy Minister Khurram Dastagir Sahab has cautioned that some power plants might go offline during the cyclone. Is power failure, if it happens, when it happens, going to affect the entire province or both provinces?
Well, it would be very sweeping to say that whether it happens or not. But let me say that it happens throughout the world. Whenever a cyclone hits, even in the most developed parts of the world, that is America and Europe, the power shortages are observed over there as well. Because of the strong winds, because of the floods, because of the unusual climatic situations, it can happen anywhere in the world. So it is not an unusual thing for Pakistan or for any area of the world. You'll have to prepare ourselves. There can be power shortages or
power outages for a longer time.
Outages for a longer time, as mentioned by the PDMA, that the people would be prepared by the charging their devices and providing backup for the electricity with the batteries and rest of the things. So I think we'll have to prepare ourselves. This is an unusual situation. It is not a normal situation. and the abnormal things can happen.
So we need to be prepared basically even for power outages. Sarmad, last comment.
Well, I'm more concerned about the wind farms, the windmill farms established along the coastline. They're a source of a continuous flow of energy to both provinces as well as the national grid. So we might face disruptions because of the heavy winds. There would be precautionary measures adopted by these management. At the same time, we also need to be prepared across the country in terms of how we actually transform and be adaptable to that scenario for that time. Maybe it's 1 week, maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's
at
10,
this
15
time
days.
it's mere speculation. The fact
Exactly.
remains that at this time it's mere speculation, but we are not far away from the time that this cyclone could, I'm not saying would, impact the coastal areas around Sindh and Balochistan. Let's hope for the best, but let's also be ready for all the consequences. Thank you so very much, Waqar Sherazi, Expert Disaster Response, and Sarmad Iqbal Khan, Head of Policy Advocacy, International Rescue Committee, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Cyclone Biparjoy. We wanted our public to be more aware of what could happen and what might happen and what the precautions they need to take. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go, I'd just like to repeat the pre-cyclone precautionary measures. Prepare for evacuation from low-lying areas, especially coastal belts. Keep your electronic devices charged. Follow television and verified social media accounts for the latest updates. Keep your first aid kit ready. Share your essential documents in waterproof containers and bags, and keep your essential items such as clothes, etc. ready for the 14th and the 15th. May Allah be with us, and may our country come as one to help those who might need help in the coming days. Allah Hafiz.